Okay, here we go. Welcome to
Tools at Tea Time
with Tim and Anna.
on Tuesdays.
All righty. All right. Okay. Oh, sorry, guys. Okay, now we got it. This is our SEL moment. So take a few minutes to sit back, relax, and enjoy 2 minutes of this video. Here we go.
The star of the winter show is...
Good evening. All schools across the country will close until further notice as coronavirus reached 100.
All right, so for all of you guys, your educators, parents, and families, we want to thank you for always being ready to pivot at a moment's notice, thinking outside the box, being flexible. I know many of my colleagues right now are pivoting as we speak, getting ready to go remote. We know that you guys are the ones that make it possible for the show to go on for all of our kids. So thank you for all that you do. All right, so let's go to our roadmap.
Okay, well, I think by now y'all kind of know how the roadmap goes, and we got our usual sort of thing going here. Anna has a really great special guest for us, and so I think we ought to just move on down the road and look at this week's mail from our imaginary fan base.
All right, so we've got a really special person today. Tim, can you read our fan mail for us today? Look at this. Look who came to join us.
Well, fair dinkum, Anna, if it isn't the Wolverine himself. Well, great. Dear Tim and Anna, greetings from down under. And I may be the greatest showman, but crikey, you Americans are doing a beauty of a job in teaching in COVID times. You can share some of the ways could you share some of the ways that you're helping students think critically in a hybrid teaching model? Yeah, good day, mates. You.
Oh, how wonderful. He came all the way. Put that letter in the mail just for us. Thank you.
He's even got a cup of tea.
That's right. He's enjoying a cup of tea for Tools at Tea Time. And we do have a wonderful guest with us today that is helping kids think critically in her classroom every day. And she is going to lead us with our theme for the day, which is argument-driven inquiry, hybrid style. So I am going to let Katie take control over the screen. Thank you, Katie, for being here. And I'm going to stop sharing. I made you co-host so you can share your screen.
Let's all join Kevin in giving Katie some of those reactions. Hit that reactions button. Give her applause.
Woo!
Hey,
Or you
Katie.
can do the happy hands.
She's hardly got the door in her classroom shut, and she's here with us.
That's right.
That part
Thank you,
is true.
Katie.
Thank you. Can you see my screen and hear me?
Yes, we can, ma'am.
Perfect. That's a great start. As I learned the first time I tried to go remote with kids, they couldn't hear me. So my name is Katie Padderud. I'm a 6th grade science teacher in 27J, and this is, I think, my 19th year in the classroom. I've been in 6th grade for about 13 years, and I started argument-driven inquiry probably about 4 years ago after a colleague of mine actually attended a training at the museum, and I wasn't sold in or bought in right away. It was overwhelming to me. It was scratchy. I wasn't sure about it. But then I got the chance to go to my own training at the museum, and I understood how all the pieces fit together, and I've been using it ever since. And what's on the screen now are some examples of what my kids have created in the past when we've been fully in person. So if you don't know about argument-driven inquiry, it's basically an investigative process that takes kids through some of the science and engineering practices and lets them run their own investigations, and they present this board at the end. Okay, but I knew that with the COVID stuff happening, if I wanted to continue doing activities like this, I was going to need a different model because the board creation and all of that stuff typically happens in my classroom with kids in front of me. And so argument-driven inquiry actually has their own online platform, and my administration was kind enough to support us in purchasing this for us to use. But it's all housed in this website called EduFlow. And if you haven't used EduFlow, it's a great educator resource where students can share things that they create and provide feedback to each other. And I'll talk a little bit about that as I go through it. But you don't have to, I don't think you need a subscription. You don't have to have the argument-driven inquiry stuff to use EduFlow for students to do some of the work that I'm going to talk about. But through argument-driven inquiry in our hybrid model, all of our activities are housed in EduFlow. And so we have 6 modules that kind of look like this on my screen when I log in. And then the activities are fully editable and customizable. So I can go in and change anything, change the level for my students. I can hide them. So like we don't do activities 12 and beyond. So I just leave those hidden. I can see them from the teacher view, but the kids never see them. And then I only make certain things visible at a time, because if I gave them all 11 tasks, some of them would do them and probably not do them well, and others wouldn't do them at all. They'd be super overwhelmed. So that's just a little bit about kind of the EduFlow platform and how that supports me. But the thing that I love most about argument-driven inquiry in the hybrid model actually has been this opportunity to have students talk about a phenomena after viewing a video. So the modules start with some sort of phenomenon. The one my kids did already this year is what makes a snowboarder jump higher in the half pipe competition. And so they start with this video of Chloe Kim at the 2018 Olympics. And then they just write about what they notice and wonder. So it's accessible. They can just get right in. And here's a couple student samples. Lots of them commented, you know, she's so young, she won a gold medal. But some of them really did talk about the science that they noticed. And then the other thing I appreciated about it, they have the opportunity to agree and respond to each other, which is kind of what's happening in this right-hand thread over here. And you can group students in EduFlow with these things called tags, and then they can reply to students like in their class or in a group. So lots of things you can do with EduFlow. And after they've kind of thought about the phenomenon, they gather background information. In a typical argument-driven inquiry, it comes from the lab program in a handout form. Online, it's more of a web page that they have to read. But again, that was fully customizable. So I went in and edited pieces of it to make the text a little bit more accessible for my students. But it just gives them some background information. And they pull out the important pieces. You can see kind of a reading strategy that I walk the students through. And luckily enough, right now we're hybrid. So I could support them in this our first time through as well. After they get a little more background information, they plan their own investigation. And another thing that I really enjoy about argument-driven inquiry is that it's not cookie cutter science. When I was in elementary, middle and high school, the labs were scripted and you had to follow these directions and do these things. And for those of us that learn science that way, giving up control in our classroom can sometimes be a little bit uncomfortable. But my students are really learning to manipulate their own variables and run their own investigations. Even though they're terrible, right? They have to start somewhere. And they get a lot better as they, go through and learn more about how scientists do science. So this is a student talking about changing the friction, mass, and drop height in their simulation to see what happens. So they submit a proposal and there's a peer review. They also plan out their data table just to support them as much as possible with their thinking beforehand. Because students, want to run into the investigation and skip all the stuff that comes first. And so then there's a peer review process where they kind of double blind each other's proposals. And so hopefully they get to see other people's proposals. I submitted a few good examples, like through some dummy student accounts to encourage like maybe some things they might want to change after seeing some others. But they submit their proposals and then they really get a chance to run off and investigate and collect their data. So there's another page that supports them in that, but they were using a PhET simulation from UC Boulder to collect their data. So this was like the skateboarder on a ramp one. But this student made some observations, collected some data in the data table, and I just let them go because I know that I'm going to get them all back at the end. And so they can take their investigations in whatever direction, as long as they're safe, in whatever direction they want to, and run with it and change their own variables. And they start to realize like, oh, I changed way too many. I don't know what affected the skateboarder, or I didn't collect enough data. And so there's power in their missteps as well. And then once they've done all of that, the real kind of meat is to create and present a draft argument template. And so they, hold on, Izzy. So they create their board through Google Slides. And then EduFlow asks them to screencast. My kids are more familiar with Flipgrid, so I had them present in Flipgrid. And it's really powerful to hear them talk about the science they did. So we're not going to watch Izzy's whole video, but just to give you a little taste, if you've never used Flipgrid, I would recommend that as well.
Okay. So my claim to the guiding question is I think they have to start higher and have less friction, because my evidence is when I tested it on the skater simulation, I started it at 4 feet, 6 feet, and 8 feet. I noticed that the 8-foot start got the skater farther and got it higher, but the mass of the snowboarder also mattered, because if it was 8 feet and heavy, there would be more friction, and it will cause it to slow down faster.
So just an example of students sharing, and then through Flipgrid, they got to watch each other share their own and provide some peer feedback about the strengths and the weaknesses. And then they finalized their argument. They went back to their Google slide, made any changes or revisions. And then it's not part of the ADI online process. But since my students were in front of me 2 days a week, I had them run an in-person argumentation session where they actually got to have a conversation with each other about the information that was on their screen. And I support them through that as well, because they're sixth graders and it's all new for them. But I give them, you know, sentence starters and some questions that they can ask each other. And by the end of the year, in a typical setting, they're having some pretty profound discussions. And even just this first attempt, having to defend their thinking and share some of that through the argumentation session was really powerful. So that's a little bit, that's as far as we take it. The actual argument-driven inquiry goes into like a scientific paper. But for my babies that have never really done science before, that's probably plenty. So we stop there and then figure that in 7th and 8th grade, they can worry about those higher level papers and some of those things. But there's again a double-blind process for the paper and all the things. EduFlow is wonderful, a wonderful tool to support students. And the last thing I'll end with today is just some finished products. So some successes that I celebrated after this. All 49 of my students in this first quarter, when we did it, submitted a board with a guiding question and a claim, or a Google slide. Every student achieved that, which for kids that have never done science before is a really positive first step. And then most students had like scientific claims. They were on target, on track. And most students had some form of scientific evidence to support their claim. And most students attempted justification, but that's the part that my sixth graders struggle with the most. So we have room for growth there. Lots of different ways that students justify or display their evidence. Lots and lots of data tables. So I'm talking about drop height and jump height. I also like the interpretation of the evidence piece because they kind of tell what the evidence means to them. Some people made graphs. A couple brave individuals tried to use just visuals to support their claim. And then, you know, some of these students actually progressed towards justification. So this particular student was trying to connect the kinetic energy and potential energy back to what they were seeing. And then this student talked about friction and has a whole bunch of observations in their data table as well. And then talking about energy too. So just kind of some higher level thinking from sixth grade students done through the argument-driven inquiry process. So I don't know if I talked too fast or how I did on time.
That was perfect, Katie. That was really good. We shared some information in the chat with you. There's a link to this PowerPoint so you can look at it closely, and a link to EduFlow. We are getting ready to go on our wonderful time for the breakout rooms. And we do have a breakout prompt.
And I just pasted it in there, Anna.
Oh, wonderful. All right. Do you want to read it to us?
Is that me? I'm sorry. What are one or two ideas that you got from Katie's presentation that you'd like to try with your students? And if you don't teach science, how might you adapt the idea of helping students think critically and use this in what you're currently teaching? Like, how could you use a phenomena from social studies, or to have the students investigate that or find out what happened, or even from a novel to try to make predictions and gather evidence from a text? So how could you do that?
Yes, and even math, right? So I'm asking you, if you get breakout room number 1, please do not accept it. Stay with us so we can record a conversation. But everybody else, there's your prompt and the rooms are open. We have a few people here. So thank you, Katie. And having Katie with us gives you an opportunity to ask questions that nobody else can ask right now. So if you want to ask, or if you want to talk about the prompt, The floor is yours.
Hi, thank you, Katie. I teach 7th grade in Douglas County, and this is my second year. I went to the same ADI training, I think, actually, at the museum. And I love what you've done with it. I'm teaching hybrid, but I'm quarantined right now. So I've added like this layer of complexity in the last 2 weeks of trying to figure out how to go about everything. And we're actually going remote after Thanksgiving. So I like what you've done to kind of break things down and have students work together and have them figure out the phenomena rather than having that direct instruction that we see from a more traditional approach to a lot of topics. Kind of trying to think through how to do that as the situation keeps changing. Have you thought about what to do if your school goes full remote?
Well, that happened today. So we're also going full remote after Thanksgiving. And with the ability to support students we're still going to meet just online. And I really, if you haven't checked out EduFlow, I would, because it just has so many different ways for students to connect and share, even without the actual like programming from ADI. Luckily, we have that, and so it's not going to change too much of my plan. I'll have to support them virtually instead of in person, but the tool is still there, and I've done it once now. So we're gonna struggle our way through it, but there's a lot of really positive stuff to support students in having conversations with each other. And some other things there.
Katie, can you tell us a little bit about what are the various components of EduFlow that allow that to happen?
So they basically, from what I have discovered, and there's a lot that I don't know, but students can upload documents in many different forms. They can upload videos of themselves talking, Google Docs, PDFs, just about any document you can think of, and then you can either attach it in the discussion style like I had for the phenomena-based kind of intro, or they can do the peer feedback kinds of things to provide sharing and conversation. So I think there's probably more that it does too. Those are just the couple ways that students interacted with each other through the EduFlow platform.
Yeah, I hear you. You're like, I would love to fully explore this tool, but the house is burning down, so I don't need that right now. I'll wait till later.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just the teaspoon of everything on any given day.
Yeah.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
We use Google Classroom a lot, and it sounds like EduFlow works around some of the issues we've run into. Like we got put on the beta for Breakout Groups, and that's been wonderful to have finally. So I'm interested in like trying to do some just quick 50-minute sped up ADI investigations, like get them just through the first couple stages when we get back so that they get like the prompt as a whole group, maybe set up a data table as a whole group, and then break out into small groups for the rest of the period, collect data, come up with a claim, and then come back together to finalize it at the end of the day.
I love that idea.
Katie, you haven't done an argumentation session online yet?
I have not, no, but
Yeah.
I could see how using breakout rooms could facilitate that. The ADI platform has them just like record themselves and then provide feedback, but they really miss that dialogue chance. So I like the idea of like a breakout room or some other smaller meet situation where they can share their thinking.
I'm wondering about pairing it too with, I started using Padderud some more, and I like how it does it anonymously, so then you could have groups, have just one person from the group share it out on like a text slide from Padderud, and then you can't tell what group it is, but you could see what kind of claims came out of it to start that discussion when you get back together. That way nobody feels singled out. I've noticed that's the transition for students online. It starts with my camera's on, you can hear me, and then it's my camera's off, but you can still hear me because I'm uncomfortable. You've asked
Where
me a
you can
question.
only see
and
their
I've prepared
foreheads.
you. Yeah.
It's,
It's the progression you see in class where it's like, okay, my hood's going up even though you've asked me to put it down. My head's going on the desk because I don't want you to see me. It's a very similar progression, just digitally now.
yeah.
Nolan, have you done any kind of argumentation or anything since you've gone virtual? Have you tried that yet? Because I'm just curious what people are trying.
Yeah, I just thought it was funny, like what Caitlin said, because at high school it's the full transition to just cameras off. But I've not done the argument-driven inquiry, but my other two science teachers at my school do this, so I'm gonna plug them up with the recording after this and see if they can use it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know how they're doing it online. Katie, thanks. You've really modeled some interesting ways to do that.
Yes.
Thank you. I was terrified.
I couldn't tell, Katie. You did a great job.
Yeah, and Katie, I did do the breakout groups and rotate people. I had them first identify who the stays were and who the strays were. You're going to find that when I'm going to mix you up, and the two of you will always be in the same room because you're staying there. And then I just literally went down the line and moved two people ahead, one group, one group, one group, one group. It's hard though with 30 people, I think, to do that.
Yeah.
Hey, Anna, can I make a quick plug before we move on?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it looks like everybody's back, and I just wanted people to know, or maybe not everybody, but most people are back, that we are offering another ADI workshop like Katie and some of the other people here attended at the museum. It's on Saturday, December the 5th at the museum. So check it out at dmns.org. It's an ADI workshop. If you got your interest in this, got piqued, it's an introduction to ADI. And honestly, we didn't set this up as a plug. Anna picked Katie. I had nothing to do with it.
Right. But it was kind of perfect. And Katie and I were mentioning that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, it looks like we're all back. And we've reached the end, my friends. And Katie's episode resources are on this folder.
And I'm putting it in.
Yeah, we're pasting it on the chat, but you can also use that code. The recording of the episode will be archived in our website at dmns.org. And let's hear about next week.
Next week is Thanksgiving week, and we're planning a special episode that's all about gratitude. It's been a rough year with lots of loss for both you and your students. But then it's also been a year of some unexpected gifts as well. Next week, in addition to some fun interactive activities, we'd love to share a few of your 30 to 60 second videos telling us what you are thankful for in this craziest of years. So just jot down this link and record a quick Flipgrid video telling us. Thanks.
All right. Do you guys need a few more minutes to record that or snap a little picture?
And I sent out some specific emails to certain people begging them to participate. But please, anybody who would like to, there's the link.
Well, and until then, Hugh just wants to say thank you for coming. And we hope to see you next week. He really enjoyed that cup of tea.
Thank you. Thanks, Katie. We really appreciate you doing this for us. And thanks to all of you for tuning in after a day of work.